A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. Are we sure this isn't Friday the 13th? Maybe Monday the 13th is even worse than a Friday the 13th if you think about it, because you got the whole Monday thing going on, then you got the 13th thing going on. Hopefully your Monday the 13th is going better than my Monday the 13th. It just seems like this is one of those days where things are just breaking. Everything is just broken. Lawnmowers and technical equipment. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Coming up on the program here in just a matter of minutes, we're going to talk with Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation. That organization has filed 9 lawsuits over the past couple of weeks talking about and challenging the gun store closures that we have seen ordered by governors around the country in conjunction, in many cases, with other Second Amendment organizations like the National Rifle Association, Firearms Policy Coalition. We'll get caught up from Alan on those lawsuits here in just a matter of moments. But we do have some good news to report for our nation's gun stores. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives came out with some guidance over the weekend that will allow these firearm retailers to basically operate outside in their parking lot. You would think that this would not be something that the BATFE would have to issue guidance on, but you would be wrong. That's how regulated gun stores are, although we're always told by gun control advocates like the wild, wild west out there. It is not. But the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives says that, yes, gun stores can basically do their business outside if they want to. They also, if they have access to a, drive-through window or something like that on their premises, they could use that as well. What they're not allowed to do, let's say you've got a gun store that's got a small parking lot, their neighbor has a big parking lot, they want to try to use their neighbor's parking lot. ATF says they can't do that. You can operate on your premises outside, but it has to be on your premises as a federally licensed firearms retailer. You can't use your neighbor's parking lot. You have to stay in your space there. But this is still, I think, going to be a benefit to gun stores, certainly from a social distancing standpoint. Now employees can conduct more of the business outside, so you're not going to be in a confined space. I'm not sure, honestly, how this will apply to social distancing orders like we have in Virginia right now, where no more than 10 people are allowed to gather in businesses too at any point in time. It may be that you could have, I don't know, 12 people in a parking lot without running afoul of the law. That probably going to be an open question, but and who knows, may lead to even more litigation down the road. But this is, I think, a good step for firearms retailers around the country as they continue to try to serve this incredible demand on the part of millions of Americans to lawfully acquire firearms and ammunition during the coronavirus chaos. And again, in some states, those Americans have been thwarted by their own government in terms of preventing them from being able to acquire firearms and ammunition. That's why we've seen so many of these lawsuits filed, and it's why we sat down and spent some time with Alan Gottlieb, founder and executive director of the Second Amendment Foundation. Take a look and a listen. Alan, it's great talking with you again, sir. Thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Cam.
And on behalf of gun owners, I'm hoping that you're getting this a lot on a daily basis. But thank you for all of your efforts and the efforts of the Second Amendment Foundation to challenge some of these emergency orders around the country. I believe that we now have lawsuits that are active in every state where gun stores have been ordered closed.
We may. I think there's a couple of other ones that aren't necessarily gun stores, but where people can't get renewals of concealed carry permits or get issued concealed carry permits. And we're working on that right now as well.
Okay, so the lawsuits continue here. We'll talk about those concealed carry licenses and the other licensing laws that may be impacted by the coronavirus epidemic. But last week was a busy week for attorneys around the country, Second Amendment organizations like yourself, Second Amendment Foundation, National Rifle Association, Firearms Policy Coalition, challenging these closure orders in Massachusetts, New York. We obviously still have the lawsuits in California. What can you tell us about what you're seeing around the country, Alan, in terms of these orders that make it impossible in some of these states to legally acquire a firearm and ammunition at the moment?
Yeah, that's exactly what the problem is. We also filed last week in New Mexico, and we've got a couple more ready to go, and even maybe later today one might get filed in another state. But we had the situation where either the states are shutting down the gun stores so they can't sell guns or ammunition, or the state patrol in some of the point of contact states, the state patrol or the state police agency that issues does background checks and issues permits to purchase guns have stopped issuing them, and so we have a situation that people for renewals of permits or getting a first time permit. We even have a situation in Washington State right now where gun stores in Washington State have to have a state license as well as the federal license every year. And all their employees that touch firearms have to be fingerprinted. And the state has stopped doing the fingerprinting for the gun stores so that their licenses expire and hence they can't be in business. And as you know, if you can't have your state license, the federal government sort of pulls the federal license and says you have to comply with all state laws.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a situation now coming up in some states where gun stores are being put out of business a whole nother backdoor way.
That is unbelievable. And, and I say it's unbelievable. It's not, unfortunately, given some of the anti-gun attitudes that we've seen from lawmakers and executives in places like Washington State and New Mexico. And it seems to me, going back to New Mexico specifically, I looked at the lawsuit that was filed and the emergency statute that the governor is using there to try to order gun stores closed. And I mean, honestly, Alan, I don't see anything in the language of the New Mexico emergency statutes that would allow the governor to take that step. Ironically enough, the statute actually, theoretically anyway, would allow the governor to suspend the lawful carrying of firearms, which I think would also be unconstitutional and challengeable if she took that step. But there's nothing in the statute that says that gun stores could be closed.
I agree with you totally. And talking about the saying you couldn't carry a firearm, we had that situation in a lawsuit we filed a number of years ago in North Carolina known as Bateman versus Purdue, where the federal court said, in fact, that was unconstitutional in times of emergency. You can't tell people they can't carry a firearm. So we have a case law precedent in this already, and that's what's sort of behind some of our suits.
So I know all of these suits that have been filed, you all are seeking temporary injunctions blocking these orders from remaining in effect while this case is being litigated. And those are done on an emergency basis. How long, obviously the courts are dealing with the coronavirus as well. Has that delayed any of these decisions on temporary injunctions, or are those hearings in the briefing still taking place roughly as they would normally?
Well, in some cases they have delayed them, Cam. And one of our problems is ever getting an emergency order to begin with is like hitting a 3-point shot from mid-court. So the odds are against you to get an immediate remedy. So in some of these cases, we're looking at months out before we actually have, a court decision saying that it was wrong and it should never be done again. So it's just a long, drawn-out process. These things don't happen overnight. Even if we win a temporary injunction, or temporary restraining order against one of these laws, you're still going to have it appealed. So we're in this for a long fight. It's not going to end quickly.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And in the meantime, as you say, I mean, some of these gun stores are really suffering here. The DHS federal guidance has declared gun stores to be part of that critically essential workforce. But, as you point out in Washington State, if the state police aren't doing the fingerprinting for the gun store employees, how long is it going to be before these stores are forced to close the doors, and how many of them will never be able to reopen after all this is over?
Obviously a lot, but in all honesty, Cam, that's not something we can really litigate per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like any other store as well. Our arguments are based on the consumer, that I have a right to own a firearm, to buy a gun, to protect myself and my family, particularly in times of emergencies, and you're not allowing me to do so. So while we do have some in our complaints, some of our plaintiffs are gun stores.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole logic in line here is that it's an individual right for people to be able to buy guns and ammunition, and if you shut stores down, they can't exercise their rights.
Talking again with Alan Gottlieb from the Second Amendment Foundation. And we've seen in places like Massachusetts where the governor has declined to declare gun stores essential businesses. You've had towns actually write cease and desist letters for gun stores that have remained open. You talk about the inability of those individuals around the country to purchase a firearm and ammunition in some of these states. We know that there are a record number of gun sales taking place in the country right now. We know that there are a lot of first-time gun owners. We know that there are a lot of Americans who want to exercise their right to keep and bear arms for the very first time. And yet we saw in California, I think it was, the federal judge taking a look at the case out of Los Angeles County, basically said, no, this is fine. The sheriff could order those gun stores closed if necessary because this doesn't rise to the same level as, let's say, Washington, D.C.'s ban on handguns that was struck down in the Heller decision. What do you say when a judge says that, the complete inability of anybody to purchase a firearm or ammunition legally somehow is not as big a deal as, a ban on handguns in Washington, D.C.?
Well, my argument is that it is a ban. It's an outright ban because if you don't have one and can't buy one, it's banned. And so the bottom line is that our argument here is that it is a total ban. It doesn't allow you to purchase a firearm for self-defense to have in your own home. And as a result, I think this judge was totally wrong. But then again, it was an Obama appointee. And that's how it happens when you draw some of these judges. You never know who you're going to get. That will be appealed, and I'm sure it will be overturned.
That's very good to hear that the appeal will take place. And I'm with you, because I know that the judge said, well, look, this is only temporary, but we don't know how long this is going to last. This is open-ended. So for the moment, we can assume that this is going to be the case for the foreseeable future. And it's not like our rights disappear just because a state of emergency has been declared or a stay-at-home order has been issued.
Exactly. And, the Bill of Rights isn't limited by national emergencies. I mean, your rights don't just taken away from you by an executive order at the stroke of a pen, not even with any legislation being passed. I mean, this is just totally a trampling of Second Amendment rights for lots of individuals. And what's interesting, you mentioned the record gun sales. I love this because people are voting not for gun control, but they're voting for gun rights by going out and buying guns. And the other side is really on the defensive and back on their heels. And a lot of these first-time buyers, a lot of these people, Democrats, were told that it's easier to buy a loaf of bread than it is to buy a gun. Well, now they know that's not exactly true.
Absolutely. My colleague, Kira Davis at Red State, had a piece over the weekend where she talked with a gun store owner there in California, and he said there are so many people walking in who've, again, as you say, they've been told by the media, easier to buy a loaf of bread than buy a gun, and they're asking, well, what's this 10-day waiting period all about? Why can't I passed the background check, I'm good to go. Why do I have to wait a week and a half before I can take possession of my firearm?
And not only that, but in many cases, the 10-day waiting period is becoming 15, 20, 25, 30 because they can't process things quick enough. One, because of the number of people going out and buying firearms, all these new first-time buyers. And two, their staffing is not full staff because of the virus to begin with. There are people that are sick, and they've slowed things down with the social distancing. There's a whole lot of reasons why now a 10-day waiting period becomes a 30-day waiting period. And people are now starting to understand these gun laws have unintended consequences.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now you had mentioned at the beginning of our interview that you're looking at some places where concealed carry applications are not being accepted or pistol purchase permits are not being accepted. I know that Second Amendment Foundation, along with Grassroots North Carolina, and I believe FPC was involved in this lawsuit as well, challenged the Wake County Sheriff's decision to simply stop accepting pistol permit purchase applications and concealed carry applications. You all were able to reach an agreement with the sheriff. He is going to start taking those applications, I believe, as of today, or it might have been last week. But you're telling me there are still other jurisdictions that are simply putting up these barriers in terms of processing the applications that people can lawfully possess these firearms.
Yes, I'd like to tell you exactly where, but I can't telegraph our lawsuits before they're filed.
Sure.
And hopefully one gets filed later today or tomorrow in one of these states. But in North Carolina, there in that county, it was two things. One, you had to have a permit to be able to go purchase a gun, and you had to have a permit to be able to carry a gun. And he stopped issuing both. He's now issued the permits to purchase the gun, but when it comes to getting the concealed carry permit, it's a slow walk process. And while he started to open it up, it's still there's an unbelievable backlog. And so while we've reached an accommodation, we don't have a total legal agreement yet because we want a court to sign off on this that it's being done openly and properly.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And again, I mean, I don't know. Are you having a hard time? Are you able to keep up with everything that's going on around the country? How important is it when gun owners see something that's happening, in their backyard or in their neck of the woods, that they reach out to Second Amendment Foundation and let you all know what's going on?
Well, Cam, that's how we find out what's going on, and that's how we get our plaintiffs in some of these lawsuits. So it's important for the grassroots people, the first offenders, Second Amendment first offenders on the ground, when something happens in their area, to let us know about it, and we've been responding as quickly as we can. I mean, in the last few weeks, we've already filed 9 lawsuits, which is like a record in a couple-week period. So, and there's still some more on our plate that we're looking to file. But we usually find out about it first because somebody emails us or calls us, emails or leaves a message at our website, and gives us a tip that something is happening, and we investigate it, and we go back to those people hoping that they'll be plaintiffs or can help find us some plaintiffs. And we have a great legal team, and we've been coordinating with other, national groups as well to be able to make sure that we're all on the same page.
That's amazing. 9 lawsuits in the past couple of weeks, and you're looking at more. That is incredible. And again, it would be great if these lawsuits didn't cost a penny to file and to litigate, but unfortunately that's not the case. So I'm just saying this personally, if you can support these Second Amendment organizations at this point in time, I know the economy is tough for a lot of us, but if you can support these organizations, please do so. And is there any way, Alan, what's the easiest way for folks to contribute to SAF?
Well, probably just go online at saf.org and just make a donation or join at saf.org. And I'd really appreciate it because right now our expenses are up at record levels, and our income, I don't know how well it actually is coming in, because we rely a lot on small donations from lots of blue collar people, quite frankly, and a lot of them don't have jobs right now.
Right.
So if people can help right now, now's a critical time to help, and much appreciated and needed.
Absolutely. Alan Gottlieb, as always, sir, thanks so much for coming on the program. It's good talking with you today, and thanks for everything you all are doing.
Well, thank you, Cam, for helping get the word out. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime, sir. All right, let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. We will start with our recidivist report from the state of Texas, Dallas area, where a man arrested in the shooting death of a 43-year-old in the Dallas Oak Cliff neighborhood. And according to authorities, this guy, known to law enforcement, the victim in this case, 43-year-old Travis Crowder, the suspect in this case, 42-year-old Montez Ashby. Detectives were called about 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday to the East Oak Cliff neighborhood. That's where they found that Travis Crowder was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Montez Ashby told detectives that a fight between the two escalated, or an argument between the two escalated into a fight, according to the Dallas Morning News. He told police that he then shot Crowder with a handgun. Right now, bail's been set for $1 million for Ashby. He has a previous family violence conviction, which is a felony. Admitted to choking a woman, received a 30-month sentence. He also has 2 previous felony drug possession convictions. And then 2 years ago, in 2018, Ashby was given 7 years probation after he was convicted of repeatedly violating a protective order that a relative had taken out against him. Prosecutors wrote in court documents that he had violated the terms of his probation. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Clearly, he didn't do 2 years in prison because that was 2 years ago when Montez Ashby's was back out onto the streets. Now he's back behind bars. Chances are, if Ashby had received, a genuinely tough sentence for those crimes, he would not have been out on the street, and Mr. Crowder would be alive today, unfortunately. Now, our armed citizen story also comes from the Lone Star State of Texas, where a woman in her 60s ended up defending herself and her 73-year-old fiance against a home invader. This was in Gillespie County, Texas, over the weekend. 19-year-old began banging on the back door of the home. 73-year-old got up to check on what was going on, and that's when the 19-year-old burst through the door, began striking the 73-year-old with a blunt object, actually knocked him unconscious, and the 65-year-old fiance ended up grabbing a gun, telling the 19-year-old to stop, warning him, actually fired a warning shot, which not real big on those, and still the 19-year-old continued to beat this 73-year-old man. That's when the 65-year-old woman was forced to pull the trigger, shooting and killing the 19-year-old suspect. Police say this was an isolated incident. They believe that drugs were involved. Not that this was a drug deal gone bad, but perhaps the suspect was on something at the time that he broke into the home there. The investigation does continue, but authorities are not expecting any charges to be laid against the 65-year-old who acted both in self-defense and in defense of another. And finally, our good deed of the day today. Let's stay in Texas. Why the heck not? Former Texas Ranger Derek Holland, hoping to feed Dallas Police Department officers in the West Oak Cliff neighborhood. Derek Holland, philanthropist Amy Simmons, donating thousands of dollars to the Assist the Officer Foundation. And Fox 4 in Dallas says that the Assist the Officer Foundation turned around, put that money back into the community. They used the donation to support a local restaurant and feed officers as well. Dallas Police Department Major Vincent Weddington says, "We are humbled that people think enough about us during these times when they're dealing with their own personal trials and tribulations. So for them to take the time to come and deliver food to our officers, we are humbled and extremely appreciative of these acts of kindness." Fox 4 says while officers were grabbing lunch, they were also able to get more personal protective equipment thanks to donations from the community. So Derek Holland and philanthropist Amy Simmons and anybody who was going above and beyond right now to help those in need, we thank you for your very, very good deed. That is about all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Want to thank you for being a part of the program as always. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to do a VIP Gold Editors Chat. Pushing that back. We were supposed to do it today, but we're going to push it back until tomorrow. So if you are a VIP Gold member of Town Hall Media, get ready to chat with me tomorrow. We'll let you know what time that will take place at bearingarms.com. Also on tomorrow's Bearing Arms Cam & Company, we're going to talk with Robin Sandoval from A Girl and a Gun about their national training conference, which is now moving 100% online. And we'll get to that story as well as all of the day's top headlines on the next edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Thanks for being a part of today's program. Until we speak again, be safe, be well, and be free.